Hello there. If you get really nervous about job interviews, you're definitely not the only one who feels that way. In this short video, I'm going to share with you 3 really simple steps that you can take to prepare for any job interview, regardless of the type of role or company that you're going for. So keep watching and we'll give you everything you need to get ready for that interview. Hello and welcome to The Bridge Coaching. If you're new here, my name is Emmy and I have been working as a career transition coach for people who are in transitions between careers, roles, or even countries. And I've been running The Bridge Coaching since 2013 now, so I've been around for a little while. If you're interested in topics around expat life, career transitions, etc., you will find a bunch of different playlists in this channel with a range of videos on those topics, so feel free to go and explore that. Today, however, I wanted to talk about job interviews. It's probably one of the most commonly asked questions, both from my clients that I work with one-on-one, but also from the community here on YouTube and on Facebook. And I often get questions from people asking, how do I prepare? How do I put my best foot forward? How do I manage those nerves when I get really nervous when I'm preparing? And I've got 3 really simple tips that I'm going to share with you today to make that preparation for your next job interview that little bit easier. It's December 2020 as I filmed this, and I'm also in the process of putting together an online course that will be available for free, and it's going to come out very soon. So when it does, I'm going to link that in the description box down here as well, so you can access that course, because job interviews actually has a lot of different nuances to it. But if you have an interview coming up very soon and you want to prepare right now, that's why I'm recording this video for you. Before I dive into the 3 steps that you can do to prepare, I want you to be really aware of something that we in coaching talk about and call the ego. The ego is not about being selfish or egotistical. The ego is simply that little voice in our head that wants to keep us safe, that doesn't like change. And if you have that little voice from time to time going, who do you think you are? Why do you think you could be successful at this, etc., etc., it's your ego talking. So we all have it. It's perfectly normal. It's perfectly normal to be nervous. And it's just really important though, when you are going through a change or you're putting yourself out there, your ego will go crazy red flag and it's going to go, why are you changing things? It's perfectly good the way it is. Why are you pushing me? So if you're curious to learn a bit more about the ego and how it affects us, I've written a bunch of blog posts about this and I will link all of them in the description box down here below so that you can have a read if you're interested to know more about that. But just be mindful of that little voice in your head because we all have it at times. Okay, so tip number 1 is to, before you even start preparing and looking at the company and looking at the role, I want you to acknowledge yourself and remember that you have earned the right to be here. The fact that you have an interview means that you submitted some kind of application, CV, or connection point. They looked at it and they deemed you interesting to talk to about this particular role. Isn't that exciting? So pat yourself on the back. I remember I've gone through periods of time when I've been unemployed and I've struggled to find work. And the moment I knew I had an interview lined up, I got really nervous and I started to tell myself that I'm not good enough to get this role anyway, etc., etc. So put a big pause on that self-criticism that you may or may not be doing and acknowledge yourself for being here. You have the right to meet with these people. You've earned that right. So don't in any way put yourself down at this point. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, quite simply, is do your research. I have been a hiring manager and I've hired people in the past and sat through interviews for that. And I've also been the interviewee many times where I've been interviewing for a role that I really want. And in the end of the day, it shows really, really clearly if you've read up on the role or not. You know, some people, when I've been the person interviewing them, I can tell that they're nervous, but as a compassionate person and a compassionate leader, you can see through that. What you can also see through though is if someone hasn't prepared, if they haven't read up on what the role actually is, if they haven't read up on what your company does or the recent events or the recent news in your company, it kind of goes to show that that person probably doesn't care all that much about this specific job. Normally, if you get to the interview stage, it's a handful of people or so, depends on the role of course, that have come through. So they've actually shortlisted you. So I always recommend to my clients, and I've also done this myself when I'm preparing for interviews, is I read through the job description in detail. Look for the things that they're asking, the skills that they want, and think of specific examples. It's those classic interview questions that, tell us about a time when you showed leadership in your team, or when you had to manage large budgets, or when, etc., etc. So read through that role description and write down, not an essay, but some short bullet points of how you have that skill or have done that thing in the past. So write that down, and this, by the way, is applicable whether you have a face-to-face interview or if you're interviewing over Zoom or Skype, which a lot of people have been in 2020 due to the pandemic. So write that down, do your research, and also research the company. Do a quick Google on any news articles, any awards they might have won, any things that might have happened that could be really relevant to know about or bring up in the interview. I also always recommend to people to go to the company's values section. That section on the website that says about us. What do they stand for? What do they care about? Are their values at all aligned with what you care about? So this is your time to make sure that you come really prepared to the interview itself. I'm not saying spend days and days doing this. I would probably say spend a couple of hours or so, depending on the type of role. And if you also know people who have worked for that company before, this is obviously a great time to check out your LinkedIn profile or something like that, see what connections you have available, and chat to them and see if they can give you any insights to the interview process. Okay, so step number 3 is a really simple one in principle, and it's really useful if you're feeling nervous, especially both before and during the interview itself. Remember that an interview is kind of like a first date. So they've put a role out there in the world and you've read the description of the role and liked the look of it. They then read your response to that and decided that you would be a person that they would like to meet with to fill this particular role in their business. But it has to be a two-way street. Quite often I think people feel like, you sit at an interview and perhaps you've got one or two or several people on the other side of the table, and at times it can almost even feel like a cross-examination. Just remember though that it's a two-way dialogue. Of course they're going to have a lot of questions to you that they want you to answer, and that's why you did step number 2, which was to prepare answers for how you fill the role criteria, how your skills would be suitable to work with them. But make sure as well, as part of this kind of dating process, if you will, is to have some questions ready for them. I'm going to cover a lot of these questions in more details in the online program, but just top line, a few questions I always recommend to have ready are things like, how do you collaborate, especially in this digital world in 2020 when a lot of us have been working a lot more from home. So what does team collaboration look like here? What systems do you use? Or even things like, do you do social things here together on weekends or after work kind of thing? Another great question to ask your prospective manager, if the person this role reports into is at the interview, you could ask them very simply, what do you love about working here? What's great about this company? And if the person struggles to answer that will probably give you a little bit of insight to the type of person that you will be working very closely with. So there you go, 3 really simple steps to make sure that you deserve to be there, so don't question that. Back yourself and let yourself shine in this interview. Secondly, do the work, prepare for the interview, learn about the role, the company, and be ready to share examples and really show how you can be an asset to them. And finally, third one, it's a date. It has to work for you as well. If your gut feeling is telling you that something's off, or if you're really liking it, then it's probably a good opportunity to either have a second interview or future conversations, or you could even know at that point that, thank you so much for going on this date with me, but I don't need a further chat with you guys. I don't think this is the right fit for me. So again, keep a lookout for when the online program drops. If you want to be part of the newsletter list, I will leave a link down below as well so that you can opt in and make sure that you don't miss updates from me. And also feel free to subscribe here on YouTube, because there will be more videos coming out about a range of tips around career transitions and life transitions in general. If you have any questions at all, feel free to get in touch with me via hello@thebridgecoaching.com.au. Look forward to see you in the next video.